Awesome. Got me all flustered being nice and stuff. All right, so let's pick up where we left off last week. So we're going to start off on page 127, and it's going to be the first full paragraph. And just some context of what we're talking about or where we're at in this book. What I always like to point out is the family afterward. What we are talking about is the challenges a family will face after this spiritual awakening that the alcoholic or whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study has. That's what we're talking about. Now, what we read last week was there as a rule, and it's like, we don't like rules, don't tell me what to do. But as a rule, the alcoholic, the recovered member, will take one of two directions. Now, the first direction is diving headlong into business, like jumping right into workaholism. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. And it was talking about how, and we're going to talk about the other direction here in a bit, and that other direction is diving into spirituality. And what we saw on page 126 was that was actually not a great way to go. It starts with a warning. Oh, goodness, that's lovely. People are putting, by the way, I always forget to mention it in the announcements. If you just want me to go on a tangent or you got a question, you throw it in the chat. My little squirrel brain will follow that nut and we'll get answers, or we'll go on a journey. Either way, that's what the chat's for. Or whatever. So it starts with a warning where it's like, hey, as a rule that we might dive headlong into business, dive into trying to get on our feet again financially, but that's not the safest way to go. And then it talked about how, I'm just summarizing it to the best of my ability, the sober member is now like throwing everything they got into business, working long hours, and they're not showing up and meeting their family responsibilities, not giving time and love and attention. And so it gave some directions on how it's saying, hey, both parties are mistaken. Here's how we navigate it. And just really, really quickly, what the directions for the family are is to make sure that we don't argue, don't nag, but also that hey, let's pick our battles. It's that idea of this is somebody who is doomed to die of a terminal illness, and here they are sober. Let's praise the progress and let us show or meet those periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy with tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. And last week I spoke about, man, I can't just pull tolerance out of nowhere. I need God's patience, tolerance, and love to flow through me. And that's the thing, is regardless of where I am, whether I'm the family member, the alcoholic, or what have you, if I'm reading these directions, it applies to me. All right, so there will be those periods. So that's the direction for the family. So for me, as a recovered addict, a recovered alcoholic, what are the directions for me that always apply to me? Kick it off, page 127, first full paragraph. So it says, the head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. Oh, man. You mean we're kicking off this big book study with personal accountability? Rude. And it says he can scarcely square the account in his lifetime. So I won't, the idea that man, I won't ever be able to fully repair all the damage that I caused. I won't ever. But man, I'm called to spend my life doing my best to repair the damage, especially with family. And it says, but he must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. That is important. It goes on to say, for us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded. And some of you guys know I'm pedantic. To be pedantic is to be fixated on tiny details that aren't that important. I just have a lot of those moments, but I try to keep those to myself. But one of the places where I'm out loud with the pedantic is focusing on the idea that it is not progress, not perfection, but instead it is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. And we see that highlighted here. Material well-being follows spiritual progress. It never preceded. And why I emphasize that and why I focus on that is because we come into recovery, and how often do I think, man, I'm progressing, right? I get the job back, I get the relationship back, we get the car, and then we complain about the drivers wherever we're driving. We were talking a little about that before the meeting. You know what I mean? We get those things back and we think I'm progressing, but what is the truth about my reality as somebody who has this illness? None of those things can keep me sober. I can't stay sober on my family. If I could, I would have. I can't stay sober on a good job. I can't stay sober on a bad job. I can't stay sober on a good relationship. Sure as heck couldn't stay sober on a good or a bad relationship. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't stay sober when I had money. I couldn't stay sober when I was broke. None of that keeps somebody like me sober. What matters is, how am I progressing spiritually? Money cannot come first. What comes first is a relationship with a power greater than myself. A simple way to say it is, I've got to put God first. You know, and I'm somebody, listen, I am not a financially successful person. Like I'm fine, I'm stable, but I don't have a lot of those things that people might expect. And I've had some people be like, hey, if you don't have like a job and a this and a that and all these things, you're not a good AA. Like, they said that to me, and I was like, well, that was unsolicited. I didn't ask for that. No, thank you. I didn't say that. I just quietly wrote inventory. That's what I did. That's how I handled it. Not well. But here's what I found. The co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, they were not doing well. Rob will tell you, he's got the deets. He probably has their bank account information. He knows their Venmo run dry. I know they didn't have Venmo, and I don't really know how Venmo works. We don't have that in Canada. But Bill Wilson on page 3, I had arrived. He never had that I have arrived financial success ever again. And Dr. Bob, he struggled financially. Fitz Mayo was also struggling. You know what I mean? They were not making the money. And in fact, when we get to the chapter 2 employers, we're going to talk about Honor Dealers, that little company that Hank had going. It was going in the red. It was not going well. But I like to remember that, yeah, it was a steep decline. I like to remember that the impact that these guys, these human beings had, was far more than what they had in their bank account. And just for a silly little drunk, a silly little drug addict like me, man, I would rather affect lives than have a lot in the bank account. That's just me. You don't have to agree with me, but that's the stuff that I'm here for. You know. Oh yeah, the label pedantic, absolutely. Oh, if you want other ones, punitive. That's little P words. Punitive is when I'm being punishing. You know what I mean? I'm gonna hold it against you, and I'm gonna be pedantic because I got to get the deets to be punitive. Sorry, I have this thing where I get into language. I was at the other big book study, and I was like, I'm going on an etymology tangent, and that should surprise no one. Alrighty, back to the book. All right, so it says, since the home, so this is the direction for us. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. So I have caused more harm in my home and to my family than anywhere else. And there's this into action, when we talk about step 9, there's the metaphor about how the alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. And there is that tornado method of having a look at seeing it where I caused harm. And I'm going to be spending a month in the Midwest. I'm going to be out there for all of July. So knock on wood, hope the weather's good. Some of you in the Midwest are like, it's a little iffy. But I'm going to be out that way. And with the tornado, the wind blows strongest at the center, right by the eye of the storm. And keep in mind, as the alcoholic, I am the storm. I am the eye of the storm. Who was affected by my winds of alcoholism, by my winds of addiction, my winds of whatever brings you to this study today? Who was closest to me? That's who got the strongest winds. That's who was hurt the most. So that's where I need to spend a lot of my time rebuilding. Right? I got to rebuild. And so it says, he will not likely get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. And it is show, not espouse. Oh, that's another big word. Now I'm just aware of them. At the Wednesday Big Book Study, there's a lovely gentleman who gives me a word of the day that I gotta like sneak into the Big Book Study, but we don't have that at this one. We just have me saying big words for no reasons. All right. But it's that idea. It is, I don't just talk about unselfishness and love in a meeting between the prayers. Unselfishness and love is how I live my life. It is an action. And I need to show it with my family, those that are closest to me. And it says, and this is one of the things I really love about the Big Book, is oftentimes, especially, actually, I'm just gonna say, has anyone have that experience where we've stopped kind of being as diligent in the work? We've stopped the daily prayer, we stopped the daily meditation, and we got some resentments that are building up. We haven't been inventorying in our evening review. We haven't been step 10 in it. Some stuff's building up, and we have that, like, 12 step is just asking so much of me. I want to point out, it is only when I'm not doing it does it feel like a mountain of overwhelm. That's 100% my experience. But also, you know what's not punitive? The Big Book. Yeah, resting on my laurels. I just wanted to have a laurel-based nap, and then I wither away and die. But that's what happens. But the book is not punitive. The book is not punishing. The program is not angry or judgmental or expecting perfection. Time after time, the book and these directions meet me where I'm out at and allow me the grace to be human. What I mean by that is that's why we have the 10th step. That's why we have evening review. That, you know what I mean? The grace to be imperfect. And here is a beautiful example of the book meeting me where I'm at in my imperfection and my deeply flawed and still resistant, not open to your ideas, and taking me where I need to go. So it says, we know there are difficult wives and families, right? The book is just, it knows. You don't understand. My partner and my family is difficult. And then it takes me where I need to go. Not with judgment, not with criticism, but hey, just a gentle reminder. But the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. We see that, at least that's why I begin to see that in my inventory process. You know what I'm saying? So, and so that's the direction for the alcoholic or for the recovered member. And it says, as each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for mine. I'm not looking for yours. And listen, let's be real. I don't got to look very hard. When I'm off the beam, everyone else is a parrot. Isn't that how you know you're off the beam? And I don't think I'm not like, ooh, I'm feeling a little restless, irritable, discontent. I show up to the rooms or my family or wherever, and I'm like, everyone's doing it wrong. That's how I know I'm off the beam, So I have no problem seeing their defects. I gotta look for mine. So as each member of the resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to others, he lays the basis for a helpful discussion. Those of you who are married or in relationships or partnerships, you guys know, somebody pointing out your shortcomings, there is no helpful discussion that comes after that. It is an argument in the making. But here's what I found out. When I show up and I own where I've made mistakes, where I've been wrong, that creates a completely different atmosphere than here's what you did and here's how you're wrong and here's how you need to fix it. Here's where I was wrong. And that's what we do. That's where the lens is. I'm looking for my mistakes and trying to amend them. And in that context of, man, there are difficult families. It's important to remember, if I am reading this book, oh, I'm so sorry, you're all here reading it with me. Thanks for coming. I'm the one with the tools. And if I'm the one with the tools, I'm the one that has to use them. And it's a helpful reminder that many, many human beings do not have the tools. Many human beings don't know how to apologize, let alone make an amends, let alone honor, like to say, like, here's where I was, you know what I mean? Like, they don't have that ability. And me owning mine might help them. More often than not, will help them be able to see and admit theirs. But that's the order. Because we always, I'm not saying we, I'm saying me, but I always want them to do it first. I'll admit I was wrong. They admit they're wrong first. Stalemate, not going to happen. Doesn't work. Alrighty. I got to admit. So it says these family talks will be constructive. And that's the thing, it's implied that there are regular family talks and meetings and that type of daily connection if they can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. So that's how I need to show up. And those are the things that I get to watch for, right? In step 10, in my evening review, I'm watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. We can see how that ties in with those defects. And it says, little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. And this is a beautiful, beautiful principle. It says giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. And that is not just for family. Man, I promise you, this is for every area of my life. I spoke about this probably last week. So the people who were here last week are like, we heard this page, move it along. But I talk about like when I'm in self, when I'm in the bondage of self, when I'm, living on like the actor playing the director, I'm in step 3 proposition, like 60, 61, 62. I'm living there. You know what I'm saying? I'm coming from a place of there is not enough. I live from a place of scarcity. You know what I mean? There's not enough love. There's not enough attention. There's not enough affection. There is not enough money, not enough whatever, right? Success or status or what have you. There is not enough. And I grab and strive and try to get, and you know what? Even when I get it, it's never enough. I would not have wanted a parade for my birthday. That would have made me very sweaty and uncomfortable. But let's say, hypothetical, please don't do this. Let's say we had a page day parade. Please don't, please, no. A page day parade. And let's say there were blimps and floats and a band and it's like the whole thing. Do you know what would happen right after the parade? Right after, do you know what would happen? I'd have this moment of, well, is that all? You know what I mean? It's never enough. I need more. But here's my experience, giving rather than getting. When I focus on what I can give, when I focus on what I can bring, and really it's not me doing it, it's like channel it. I look at it like being that channel for that power, channeling God. I'm showing up and I'm giving and I'm letting go of the results. Man, those things that felt like scarcity become abundant. It is everywhere. And there is no worries, just glad you're here. Thanks for coming. There is more than enough, more than enough. That's what happens. And the most incredible thing, like I've been doing this a little while, 12 step, this way of life. And it is the coolest thing when I'm able to give that which I feel I never got. Like I have a thing where if somebody's mean to me, I have this like desire nowadays where it's like, I want to go be nice to somebody. Where did that come from? You know what I mean? That's not like I mean, if on my power, it's like you're mean to me. I'm just gonna roll around in that and feel awful, but and that like I'm giving that which is not mine. I'm giving from God, and it is abundant. Now, Rob put something amazing in the chat. I love that you made that. Sometimes I see things. By the way, sometimes I don't. So if I didn't see your comment in the chat and you're like, Paige, you didn't address it, I missed it. And then I got distracted and went on a tangent. So just know that that's my bad. All right, let's pop over real quick to page 118, the chapter 2 wives, because it's that beautiful connection where it talks about some first paragraph of page 118, where it talks about you and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. The next time you and he have a heated discussion, what do you mean? There will be heated discussions in relationships? What? Yeah. It happens, I work these steps as a way of life because I'm deeply flawed, not because I'll get perfect. So next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, this is getting serious. I'm sorry, I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later. And what I love about that suggestion is first of all, we're acknowledging that it's getting heated. you know when you have those like fights where it's the same fight over and over again and you're just in that argument loop? Yeah, this isn't working, right? Yes, the pause. This is getting serious. And then I love this. I'm sorry I got disturbed. So immediately I'm owning what I did. I'm owning my mistakes. And this is important. Let's talk about it later. I'm honoring the fact that this is an important discussion, but I'm not going to be able to communicate effectively in this discussion. I just love that. It's so practical, and it's tucked away in a delightful little chapter that nobody likes to read, except me. I'm like, yeah, 2 words, rock and roll. I have a lot of fun in these later chapters. Join me. So back on page 128. So now this is the second direction. So the first direction was diving headlong into business. And the struggles with that is the family will feel neglected and want more attention, but the alcoholic or the recovered member who's overworking themselves feels strained and pulled in other directions. And so in summary, what do? We own our mistakes and we show the other person love and care and attention. That's what we do. So second direction, post-spiritual experience, post-spiritual awakening, this is what happens. Assume, on the other hand, that Father has, at the outset, a stirring spiritual experience. And I want to point out at the outset, because it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have a spiritual experience. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long. And it says overnight, as it were, so not necessarily literally, but very quickly. He is a different man. That dramatic change in who I am and how I show up to life. And it says he becomes a religious enthusiast. Now, we don't have to be jazzed about religion, even post-spiritual experience. I love doing a lot of spiritual seeking from a variety of faith traditions. But it's that idea that, man, I'm so excited about what's happened to me because it's a real tangible thing that has happened that, man, I want more and I want to continue to seek it. And it says he is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course. I just want to point out about that. As soon as his sobriety is able to be taken as a matter of course. Oftentimes, we'll be 30 days in, 90 days in, 60 days in, and it's like, my family doesn't trust me yet. Yeah. It was like 30 days ago. We stole the silverware. It's going to take consistency to rebuild that trust. And I want to point out, I didn't say time. I said consistency to rebuild that trust. And also returning the silverware and or the monetary value. Paying that back. That's the event. Just if you're wondering, that's how we get there. And that is our sobriety being taken as a matter of course. And it is my responsibility to demonstrate that. So it says the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, like, ugh, what's this guy on about? Then, with irritation, oh God, he's talking about God again, that sort of deal. There's talk about spiritual matters, morning, noon, and night. People have told me that I'm bad for just turning everything into a spiritual metaphor, so I am that obnoxious person. I'll own it, that's me. And it says he may demand that the family find God in a hurry, right? I got some spiritual pride, some spiritual ego. You guys got to do what I got to do. Or exhibit amazing indifference to them. So not being really interested in them, not caring about them, that's indifference. And say he is above worldly considerations. I'm a spiritual being now. I don't need to pay my taxes. The IRS has another opinion. Like, oh, I don't need to do the grocery. I am a spiritual being. And so he may tell mother, who has been religious all her life, that she doesn't know what it's all about, and that she had better get his brand of spirituality while there is yet time. That like, okay, I've had, and like, I will say, I think it does come from that powerful experience. But we see the ego in it. Like, hey, I'm doing it the right way. You got to do it my way. It's like, girl, I've been doing it my whole life. Don't you tell me what to do. I'm creating a fake argument with this hypothetical couple. It's in my head. All right, which is where most of my arguments happen, if you're wondering. That's why I got to keep inventorying this bad boy. All righty. And it says, when father takes this tack, so this direction, the family may react unfavorably. They may be jealous of a God who has stolen dad's affections. And keep in mind what we're seeing. We're going to talk about that same idea of jealousy. The recovered member not giving the time and care attention to the family that they do truly need. And it says, while grateful he drinks no more, they might not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they fail. And I'm somebody who absolutely qualifies for Al-Anon. I've done a set of steps and a set of traditions in Al-Anon, and I need it. It wasn't just for a walk in the park. I mean, I do enjoy doing sets of steps. Like, I know I'm a weirdo, but it was also out of a reasonable necessity that has been pervasive my whole life. But there is a thing when you give your everything to trying to fix and save somebody, especially that person that you love more than anyone else in the world, and you can't do it, and you know you can't do it. You've tried again and again and again, and you've got nothing. And a book and another silly drunk does it. There's that feeling of why I wasn't enough, and that's what we're addressing here. And this is an important line for anyone that's new coming back. You know, anyone that's suffering. It's this is important. They often forget Father was beyond human aid. If I have the illness that is outlined in this book, lack of control once I start, and lack of choice, I say I don't want to do it again, and I do it again. I am beyond human aid. The best partner, the best spouse, the best children, the best family, the best job, the best doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist. It is not enough for somebody like me. Best sponsor. I am beyond human aid. They may not see why their love and devotion did not straighten him out. Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his past wrongs, which is to amend, that is what an amend is. Not an I'm sorry, although I am from Canada, we do sprinkle those in. I'm just saying that because there's probably not a lot of Canadians here because of the hockey game. Sports. So I had to explain it. But it is setting right the wrong, repairing the damage, restoring what I have broken. That's what it is. So if he means to right his past wrongs, why all this concern for everyone in the world but his family? What about his talk that God will take care of them? It kind of makes sense that we'd say that, especially people like us who are like, we come to this, it's like, God can't help me. And then we take some steps and we're like, oh man, God really helped me. Don't you worry, God will take care of you. But you can see why they'd be like, hey, could you pay your taxes? It's not April, so I don't know why that's something my brain's fixated on, but here we are. And it says they suspect Father is a bit balmy. Like they're like, hey, he's kind of out of his mind, like, okay, he's lost it. He is not so unbalanced as they might think. Many of us have experienced Dad's elation. And I talk about this. This is an experience. That's what I'm after, an experience. You know the word elation, it's that like joy lifted up, that like I'm elated, just so happy. You know what I mean? That. I want to read about that. You know what I mean? I don't want to watch an HBO documentary about elation. I don't want TikTok reels of like, this is what it means to be elated. Do you know what I want? I would like to be elated. That is what I mean when I say that this thing is experiential. I need to experience it. And how I experience it is by taking the action. So we have experienced Dad's elation. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication, which is what I will say is way better than any other intoxication because that led me here. And I do always make that metaphor that like, hey, I couldn't stay well on one drink. I couldn't stay well on one pill. I couldn't stay well on one crack hoot. I can't stay well on one experience. I want to continue to grow and seek those experiences. And this is, oh man, sometimes when I do like my random big book bounce arounds or I do 20-minute lead shares, I pick some random places out of the book. And this is one of my favorites. I say that, but like at any time in the book, I'm like, it's one of my favorites because it's such a good book. But it says, like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. And to be gaunt is to be emaciated. You know, when you're so, yeah, skinny, lean, starved, you know, like you can just see the cheeks are sunken in, just that weight is lost, like starving. And to be a prospector is to be somebody who is mining for gold. Now, in 1849, California had their gold rush, which is why it's called the San Francisco 49ers. A little sports fun fact, sports. Uh, I shouldn't be doing, I should go hard on the sports because all the sports people are out watching the sports. So these metaphors aren't helpful. Sports. So imagine, and keep in mind, I'm in Canada, so we had our own gold rush, and it was the Yukon gold rush. And I believe it also happened in the 1800s, although Rob can tell me if I'm wrong. It was the 1800s, I'm pretty sure. You don't have to look it up. You can if you want, though. But imagine I'm going out to either the California wilderness, and I'm out in that wilderness, and the sun is beating down, and it is that harsh climate of, I don't got a lot of that water, I don't got a lot of that food. Or imagine that we're in the Yukon wilderness. Actually, I realized I should explain what the Yukon is, because the Canadians are watching hockey. The Yukon is right beside Alaska. It's the territory right beside Alaska. You know, come because of the hopeless conditions, stay for the geography. So northern Canada, like cold and barren and remote. And imagine searching for gold in the northern Canadian wilderness with bears. And I think in California you'd have those, yeah, 1896 to 1899, yeah, that's the Yukon Gold Rush. Thank you. It's really helpful when Rob's like, I will indulge your lack of focus and I will give you this information. But imagine that I'm in the northern wilderness and there's bears and it is like inhospitable. Now, one of the things you guys might not know about northern Canada, you probably would gather in the winter, it is unbearably cold. It is brutally cold and inhospitable. And in the summer, it is riddled with mosquitoes. Like it is awful. Like it is bad. Like this is not fun times up there. And so imagine being up there and looking for gold. And the prospector being gaunt means the prospector is emaciated, thin, has found nothing. And it's just like me battling my alcoholism, battling my addiction, or battling the compulsive behavior that brings you to this study. I'm alone in the wilderness and I can't find anything. Imagine that I'm in the freezing riverbed and I'm trying to pan that gold. You know, they take out they'll shovel in those pans of gold and try to find the gold specks in the river. And I'm in the water and I'm freezing and I find nothing and I find nothing and I find nothing. And that looks like me trying to use power and control to not have that physical allergy. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of everything and try everything that I can to drink or use drugs like a lady, and it does not work. I got this allergy. And I give up there and I start looking, you know, in the sides of the mountains and the dry land on the riverbanks. And I got my pickaxe and I'm going and I'm hitting it and I'm hitting it. And that's like me trying to use power and control over the mental obsession. You know, all those things that I tried to put between me and that first drink, or that first drug, or that first compulsive behavior. You know what I'm saying? I tried everything and anything that I could think of, but I am digging and I'm digging and I'm finding nothing. And I'm beginning to get hopeless and I'm starving and I love that belt drawn in. Each notch on the belt is going in and in and in because I'm dying and I'm wasting away and I don't have anything. I don't have anything that works. And I come to the rooms of 12 step. And because I'm out of options, I try the stupidest idea that I could ever think of, which is to do the steps. And I take these actions, and there it is. My pick strikes gold. Strikes gold. There's an answer. There's a solution. Not only am I sober, but I'm okay. Like, you know what I mean? There's an answer. That's what this is like. It's such a great metaphor. But it's this joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. There's no limit to the joy that's like, man, there's an answer here. And it says, Father feels he has struck something better than gold. And what we have here is better than gold, which I think is helpful. When page or so ago, we said we couldn't put money first. I can't put money first, but that's okay. We got something better than gold. And it says, for a time, he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. I might try to hold on to this thing. He may not see at once that he's barely scratched a limitless load. So what that means is this vein of gold that I found in the side of this mountain, man, it's never going to run dry. It is an endless vein of gold. But it says, which will pay dividends only if he mines it for the rest of his life. So I've got to continue to use my pickaxe and work these 12 steps as a way of life and to pay dividends. Because again, I'm not a big money person, but to pay dividends is to get that return on the initial investment. Your money's making money. Our spiritual bank account is making money. We are getting that return on investment. And only if I mine it for the rest of my life and insist on giving away the entire product. That is working with others. That is carrying this message. And I'll be very honest with you guys. When I got here, and I was not a dummy when I got here. I wasn't. I was not well, but I was not a dummy. And people would say things, and they would say things like, to keep what you have to give it away. And I would hear that, and I would be like, what the fudge does that mean? What if I give it away? I don't have it. What are we talking about? Now, I also got to let you guys know, I wasn't going to ask anyone. Ugh. You know what I mean? They might have a conversation with me. I was like to make the joke and ask me a question I don't have the answer to, like, how's it going? Like, oh, and then you know what? Oh, they'll know that I don't know. Oh, there's nothing worse than that. I mean, dying of this illness, but that's nothing worse than them knowing I don't know. And it's one of those things we often in 12 step talk about the paradoxes. And here's, hey, welcome. Yeah, 129. One of the things that I have found is there's not that many paradoxes in 12 step. What we have is things that are not intellectual, but experiential. If I try to intellectualize, man, I've got to hold on to it, or I've got to give it away to keep it. That I can't intellectual. I can't get there from here. I can't get there thinking about it, pontificating about it. You know what I mean? Obsessing about it. I get there through doing it. It is experiential. It's not a paradox. It's an experience. So I take these actions, and by the way, the reason I did not get it, the reason I didn't get it is because I didn't have it. I did not have it to give away, so I did not understand. I needed to have it. The it is the spiritual awakening. And man, when I have that, it's like I need to help others. Oh yeah, so a paradox is where two things are seemingly true and untrue at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. And so I've got to I just sometimes use words and I use words a lot. I've been using words almost the entire hour, rock and roll, and insist on giving away the entire product. So I give it away. And you guys, those of you who have sponsored and worked with others, man, you guys know there is something that happens when you sit down with somebody and you begin to see the light come on in their eye. You begin to see that hope fulfill their spirit. You begin to see the change that happens to them. And man, that is the best. That is the best. That is the dividends. You know what I'm saying? And I only know that after I work with others. You couldn't tell me before I started working with others that oh, it'll be great and it'll help you more than it'll help them. You know what I mean? You did tell me. I didn't listen. Spoilers, didn't listen. It's experiential. And so it says, if the family cooperates, as in cooperates with the spiritual way of life, dad will soon see that he is suffering from a distortion of values, that I'm a little lopsided spiritually. And actually, it's going to say that. He will perceive that his spiritual growth is lopsided. For an average man like himself, a spiritual life which does not include his family obligations may not be so perfect after all. I had a sponsor who told me one time that I could be a nun. And I was like, not offended. I was like, I would like some quiet time. But then I was like, wait a minute. Are you saying that I couldn't create more relationship harms? Because I could do that if I wanted to. I was like, what do you mean? It's the spiritual life is not about me living away sequestered in a monastery on a mountaintop. The spiritual life is how I live this life that I've been given, how I show up to family, how I show up to work. I don't work, but how I show up to when I have, how I show up to work, how I show up to the road driving. How do we show up to those other drivers? How do I show up to all these areas of my life? How do I show up? That is the spiritual, that is the spiritual life. That is what we do. 12 step is not a part of it. It is how I live all of it. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like, okay, family there, job there, driving there, you know, friends there, hobby there, AA, CA, DAA over there. No, OA there, you know, this is how I show up to all areas of my life. And once you know, they all get better when I do it that way. And so it says, if the family will appreciate that dad's current behavior is but a phase of his development, and we grow out of phases. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Water finds its own level. That is a line that has been resonated with me more and more. Like, honestly, the more I grow spiritually, the more I'm able to show up to life how I wanted to show up to life. The more that there are people in my life who are able to show up and meet me with love and kindness and tolerance and patience. But when I'm a dink, I seem to find the dinks. You know what I'm saying? All right. But I got, yeah, anywho, I was going to go on a tangent, but I'm like, focus page. Let's try to get through this to the best of our ability. All right. If the family will appreciate that dad's current behavior is but a phase of his development. So it's a phase, I'll grow out of it. And any of us who had one of those like embarrassing teenage phases, you know, anyone that was like an emo or like a, you know, like a goth is like, I'm not going to grow out of it, mom. You don't know. We grew out of it, didn't we? Some of us didn't. That's okay. But we'll grow out of it. And of development. See, again, I meant to grow and develop this spiritual awakening, spiritual growth. That's the name of the game. And it says, all will be well. All will be well. In the midst of an understanding and sympathetic family, these vagaries of dad's spiritual infancy will quickly disappear. Yeah, unpredictable actions, erratic. To me, just like I am the embodiment of a vagary. I don't think that's how you conjugate that word. So rock and roll. So if we show up in understanding, we will find that God-centered path. We will find the level. So the opposite may happen should the family condemn and criticize. Dad may feel that for years his drinking placed him on the wrong side of every argument. But now he has become a superior person with God on his side. I am a spiritual being. I can now do no wrong. Ignore the 10th step where it says when we were wrong, not if, when. Just ignore that. I am perfect and I have God, therefore I am right. I'm sure no one's ever showed up. It's okay. I do it internally. Still got to inventory that. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's spiritual ego, right? I think I'm better than others because of that. And it says, if the family persists in criticism, this fallacy, and a fallacy is a lie, you know, it's just an untrue idea, may take a still greater hold on father. Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel his spiritual justification for so doing. Though the family does not agree with dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. And that idea of let him have his head is actually like if you're riding a horse. And so a horse is going to have a bit and it's got to have a bridle and it's got reins. And that's how you point the horse in a direction. And so to let the horse have their head, I'm not explaining horses well, just the whole concept of a horse. But to let a horse have its head is really to loosen the reins and let the horse choose what direction it likes. And so it says, like the family, hey, we don't agree with all the spiritual stuff you're doing, but let this person have their head. Let them go out. Let them try these different spiritual things. Let them just go to all the meetings. Let them do that. And it says, even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility to the family. This is an important line. It is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. Because that's what I got to do. I have to work with others. It's like, let that person go as hard at that as they possibly can. And it says during those first few days of convalescence. Convalescence is recovering from illness. So in those first few days of recovery, which again points to that idea, it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. Days. It says during those first few days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. I work with others at first because I have to. Because if I want permanent, contented sobriety, I've got to work with others. But after a while, I do it because I like it, you know? It's incredible. So that, and I love, it's a theme that we see throughout the entire book. I have to work with others. I have to carry this message to others. And I say that, but I also want you to know if you're here today and you don't, or you're here today and you don't know how, or you're here today and you're afraid, what I want you to know, the purpose of this study, and I really believe the purpose of probably all, if not most, if not all, big book studies is to better able us to help those around us, to better able us to sponsor others, to carry this message. And if you're like, man, I don't know if I could sponsor, or I've not sponsored, and I've been sober a while and I feel weird about that, man, I want you to know, let us help you. Let us help you, because as it says in working with others, this is an experience you must not miss. We know you would not want to miss it. Like, let us help you have this experience. So it's as though some of his manifestations of, like, how we're showing up irresponsible and I'm spiritual now, look at me go. His manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, which means we don't like it. That's annoying. We think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than the man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development. And one of the things I really emphasize is that for me, steps 1, 2, and 3 cannot be my foundation. My foundation has to be all 12 steps. Because the first step is a concession that I'm going to relapse. The second step is the belief that there could be a solution. I don't have it yet. I'm just believing it's there. And the third step is a decision to get there with no action. I can't stay well on I'm going to relapse, but no solution in action in my life. I need all 12 steps. All 12 steps is a way of life. That becomes my foundation. So again, the context of the firmer foundation and the family afterward, after the spiritual awakening. And that's what I need. I need that firm foundation. I need to be rooted and grounded in something solid. And this is like, if there's a way to go, let me tell you, it's this, it's diving into spirituality and growing our connection in these 12 steps. So it says, he will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. Anything is better. And it says those of us who've spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced, and this is what a spiritual experience looks like, by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness. Now, the word conscience, its etymological origins are Latin. Con means with, and shus or sire means knowing. That with knowing, that deep experiential with knowing of God, of the power of God in our lives. And that's the thing. Those who have a spirit, you can, like, I don't want to say you can tell, but you can tell. You can tell who's had a spiritual awakening. And don't be like, have I? Are they looking? Are they? No, I don't mean like that. Don't be like, oh, who's judging me? That's not what we're on about. But it's truly, you can tell who's had a spiritual awakening, because they're not like flight. I know you're like, girl, Paige, you're pretty flighty and all over the place. What I mean is who they are. You can just kind of tell they're grounded in something. They might have had deep and profound experiences, but there's a grounding. And that's what we're going to talk about in the rest of this paragraph. It's not a flighty, like, are you out of your mind? It is a grounded in something deeper and showing up with this meaning and purpose. And this is just my experience. There's a sense of calm and a peace and serenity. You can just see it. You can see it. And so it says, we have come to believe that he would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with him. And I love that idea. My head's in the clouds. I'm meant to have my thoughts on God, higher power, just not on me. But our feet ought to be firmly planted on the earth. And what that means is I'm walking here. I'm walking here. I didn't mean to do that. We were talking about, I'm from New York before. New York. What I mean is that I am where I am. You know, water finds its own level. There's also grow where you're planted. And of course, change your situation. But if I'm here now, I'm here now. And I'm here to grow. And I mean, oftentimes it's like, man, Paige, what's God's will for me? It's often the inventory or the amends that I'm avoiding. You know, that's usually it. But it's also help who's in front of me. Giving rather than getting will be the guiding principle. Give, help here, help now. That's what it means. Eyes, heart, mind attuned to God and the welfare of others. Oh, I didn't mean to quote a vision for you, but a vision for you. We'll get there. I mean, we'll get there slowly because we go at the pace that this is going at, but we'll get there. Rock and roll. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. And our work must be done with a sneaky little reference to that third step, isn't it? Where third step, I got fired from the management position of my life, and I got some new marching orders, a new job description. I signed that employment contract. I work for God. My job is to be of love and service to God and the people about us, and that is my work, and that is where I'm meant to be. And it says, these are realities for us. That's emphasizing this is our experience, that spiritual awakening. It makes me more grounded and useful, and this ability to show up to situations that I could absolutely never show up for. And it says, we have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. Nothing incompatible. And that's another example where we might think, hey, that's a paradox, a profound spiritual experience, a white-light spiritual experience of the luminous variety like Bill had in a life of sanity and purpose and meaning. But actually, I don't mean to tie it in this way, but have a look at those very broke co-founders. Many of them had powerful experiences. Bill Wilson had a powerful spiritual experience. He couldn't stay well on that experience. He had to continue to work with others. Fitzmayo, who are you to say there is no God? That's Fitzmayo. That's that guy. He had a powerful spiritual experience. And yet their lives were based on allowing us to be here. Lives of service, lives of giving, and purpose and meaning in their lives. And it's not a paradox. It is something that needs to be experienced. And it's one of the things. I'm like, we got 2 minutes left. I'm like, one more paragraph. Yeah, I think I'll leave it here because that's a natural stopping place, and I maybe shouldn't try to get through it in 2 minutes. So I'll stop the recording, and then we can all unmute and say a prayer. So thank you, guys.